Welcome to Topsail Insider, where you can hear all about the businesses and events in the beautiful coastal towns in the greater Topsail area of North Carolina. Coming up, today we're interviewing Chris Rackley, the owner of Lewis Realty Associates. He is a true Topsail local, born and raised right here, and we'll be discussing vacation homes, short-term and long-term rentals, home buying and selling, investment homes, and much more today on Topsail Insider. It's time to indulge and experience the finest coastal hospitality on Topsail Island with saltwater resort and suites in Surf City, North Carolina. Designed to exceed your expectations, guests can enjoy elegant suites featuring premium, luxurious bedding, fully equipped kitchens with dishwashers, 75-inch flat screens, ensuite washers and dryers, and gorgeous ocean views. With the grand opening of their newest location, you can now relax in their saltwater pool and modern clubhouse, perfect for unwinding, socializing, and private events. Book your next beach getaway today at saltwatertopsail.com or call 910-886-4818. Saltwater Resort and Suites, redefining luxury on Topsail Island. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Topsail Insider. My name is Krista, and I am your host. Today, we have Chris Rackley joining us. He is the owner of Lewis Realty Associates, located on Topsail Island in North Carolina. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yes, ma'am. Glad to be here.
To kick things off, why don't you give me a quick overview of your business, because you do more than just buying and selling homes.
Yep. We're the second oldest company in the Topsail area, and we're a full-service brokerage. We do vacation rental, property management, long-term property management. We do represent buyers and sellers, commercial and residential. We do it all.
Oh, commercial too. I didn't know commercial.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Before we go on, I also want to ask you about Topsail's Top Choice Awards, because you won 2 awards.
Yeah. That was a very stressful time for myself and my wife, who owns a local business salon, Blue Hair Salon.
The contest. Really?
It was stressful. We were stressed.
I'm sorry.
But it was fun. We were fortunate enough to be voted the number 1 vacation rental company in the area and the number 2 real estate company in the area. My wife got an award for best hair salon as well.
Hair salon, that's right. What's her name, and what's the name of the salon?
Her name's Misty Rackley, and her salon is Salon Blue Hair Salon. It's on 210, like in between Lowe's and Surf City.
Totally drive by it all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. All right, well, congratulations to you. We are about to get 2025 season kicked off. We're going to start reviewing the categories, maybe make a few changes in the rules as well to kind of tidy things up.
Gotcha.
But y'all did great. You killed it.
Thank you.
And while we're talking about awards, I also know that you were Realtor of the Year. When was this?
This was back in 2003. I'd been in real estate for about 3 years. And, to be Realtor of the Year, one, you have to be an outstanding realtor and follow the code of ethics and be honest. And you also need to do things for your community. And at that time, I was a volunteer firefighter. And it's basically your peers vote for who they think deserves of that award. So in 2003, I was Realtor of the Year. And then 2006, I was voted the board president. I was in my 20s.
Is this the Realtors?
Yeah, Topsail Island Association of
Realtors.
That's it. Yep. So in my 20s, I was the board president, and at that time we had
your 20s,
500 members.
Dude.
So that was interesting, and I wasn't satisfied with everything that I'd gotten done, so I ran again. So I've been board president twice, and I think I was 30 the second time, so young. And then 2016, I was voted Topsail Island Chamber of Commerce Man of the Year. I believe it was 16.
Nice.
Yeah, and served on various committees with the towns and with the local association. I served with the BASE, the Business Alliance for a Sound Economy. It's a group of lobbyists for the housing and real estate industry. I was on their board for some years. So I've been real active. Nowadays, I'll bump into some people and they're like, "Where have you been?" And I'm like, "Well, I've been incognito. I'm raising children." So it's
That'll do it.
Yeah, it's hard to be that active, but there's a taste for the civic activities and for politics that I do like, and I can't say that I won't get back in that once my children are grown. But right now, my family's the focus. You know, I mean, that's the purpose of life, as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Well, I moved here end of 2015. And since I've been here, it's so rare that I meet someone who was actually born and raised here, and you were.
Yes, ma'am.
Where were you born?
I was born actually in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But live in Holly Ridge. I call it the woods. It's out in the country, down down by the waterway, Mars
Is it
Landing
still
area.
the woods?
Not as much as it used to be, unfortunately. There's a lot of subdivisions around us, but we own a parcel of land there that was family owned, and there's conservation land next to us. So once you get to our property, it's much like it was years ago.
In the pre-interview, you were talking about you lived on a piece of land with multiple houses on it. That was mostly your family, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So is that also the land you grew up on?
It is actually. I am a third generation that lived there, and my children are fourth.
Incredible.
And, it was awesome. To have a place where family can be together is super rare. It's my wife and I and our children in one house, and then we've got her mother and stepfather in another house, and then my father and his wife in another.
Yeah.
So on Saturday morning, you may hear the door slam shut, and it's just the kids, and they're at one of the grandparents' houses.
See, that's the coolest.
Yeah.
Where I grew up, which was also in the woods and sticks. We were actually on a tobacco farm, but we were all within a 5-mile radius of my grandmother, my cousins, and it was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And the cousins were the best friends growing up, and we played in the woods. It was just, it was a great life. I just want to get back. I really want you. I mentioned this on the pre-interview, but if you just keep an eye out for anything that could be turned into a compound.
Absolutely.
I really want one. It's my dream. It's so cool that you're on the same property that you were raised on.
Yes, ma'am.
How many houses do you have on that property?
We used to have 4, actually, but one of them got away from the family when I was much younger. But, the people who bought it are just good people like us, and they're almost like family.
They fit in.
Yeah, they fit in well.
So I've seen a vast amount of growth even from 2015, and you've been here your entire life. Give me your perspective as a local here, the changes that you've seen, not just in Holly Ridge, but greater Topsail. Yeah. Just the impact on the environment and the culture here.
Yeah. When I was in high school, us kids would go to the beach, on a Friday or Saturday night after work, and we'd go one of two places. We'd go to the Scotch Bonnet Pier or Barnacle Bills Pier, and neither of those are here. They were lost in 1996 to Hurricane Fran. But in the wintertime, when we would come over, it would just be local kids there playing in the game rooms, and you might pass 1 or 2 cars on the island the whole entire time. And we would joke that in the wintertime, they rolled the streets up on the island because it was that slow. Restaurants were closed during the winter and was kind of almost like a ghost town. But now you go to the island, even in December on a weekend, and you've got to wait. There's people here all the time. There's so many more amenities now. We've got so many more stores, grocery stores, and mom and pop shops, and more restaurants, and some big box, and all these things. And those are wonderful. I mean, growing up here, I remember when Highway 17 was a 3-lane road, there was no grocery stores around here, and we would travel to Wilmington with an ice chest in the back of the car to bring food back. That was like a weekly trip. We're going to town. Yeah. Like that old saying. So now I go to town every day. Yeah. If groceries, there's no weekly shopping. It's like, I need this. I'm going to grab it on the way home. So that's wonderful. The negative of it, of course, is the infrastructure is changing and growing with it, and there's some headaches there with traffic and things like that. I have noticed, I come from a commercial fishing family. My father commercial fished, and so I'm real in touch with the water. I've noticed that we've got more polluted areas and things like that.
What kind of things are you seeing to indicate the pollution? Is it debris floating?
It's just runoff. I mean, anytime you've got a development, you're going to have some runoff. Yeah. There's things that we do from the real estate side of development with stormwater management and things like that to cut that down. But there's always going to be some impact. You'll see, like with shellfish, you'll see if we have torrential rains, they may be closed for a week or more. And because shellfish are filter feeders, so they're filtering all that. They're actually cleaning the water, but you don't want to eat it when they're cleaning the water.
Right.
Yeah. So that's probably the most negative thing I've seen. But, the state, all in all, and the towns do a good job in managing that. We've got things to cut down on that risk.
So you said your dad was a commercial fisherman. Was he out of Surf City here, or was he down in Sneads Ferry?
More or less Sneads Ferry, but he was all over, up and down the coast. He was a shrimper mainly. And when I was 4 years old, they took me to Mobile Bay, Alabama, and I lived on a shrimp boat for 6 months.
Oh, that's like Forrest Gump.
Yeah, just like Forrest Gump. Just like it. So, and then I grew up working on the boats with him in the summer. And
how old were you then?
Just growing up, 8, 9, 10 on up. I worked on the boats with him until I was about 18 or 19, and that's when I decided I was going to go to college. And then in my mid-20s, I worked with him a week in Pamlico Sound shrimping because he was down a crew member. And I mean, I love it.
Did you like it as much at 20 as you did when you were 8, 9, and 10?
Probably not.
You're like, I'm going back to school.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, it's a great life, and I do love it, but it's hard work. It's dangerous, and right now seafood prices are down. Because we've got an import problem. We've got imported seafood coming in, so that drove the local seafood price down.
I was going to ask you if you've noticed a difference from when your dad was actively fishing for a living versus, and are you still tight with the fishing community down in the area?
Yeah, absolutely. All up and down the coast of North Carolina, we know fishermen all over.
Is business better or worse these days, or the same?
Last year was a tough year for them.
Really?
Yeah, the prices on shrimp were like $1, $1.25. And, for instance, these boats burn 20 gallons of diesel an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, easily.
And we know fuel went up.
Yeah,
so.
Diesel's $4 a gallon. So, calculate out that for every pound of shrimp, you get $1.25, and for every gallon of diesel, you've lost $4. So it doesn't balance out.
That's a tough year.
Yeah. So
well,
I'm
do
hoping.
You see that turning around?
I'm hoping. I've mixed feelings on the whole tariff situation in national politics, but I'm hoping that it will help the seafood industry, and that's a big if. That's if they do target imported seafood with the tariffs, drive that cost up, and that people still want seafood. Because I wonder, if inflation continues and companies pass tariffs on to us, are we going to be able to even afford to buy the seafood to begin with? So is that
right?
We'll see. I think some of the commercial fishing organizations think it's going to help them. So I hope it does.
I really hope it does.
Yeah.
I do.
Absolutely.
Since we're on the topic of how things have changed and infrastructure, do you think that bypass, the bypass was originally supposed to start by the BP station here, and now it's moved up towards the high school now. Do you think that that's going to help traffic through Hampstead?
I think so. I think it's a godsend. Hampstead used to just be a wide place in the road when I was growing up, and now it's like Little Manhattan. It's wild going through there, and the wrecks and the people getting hurt and all the traffic. So if I was coming from another area and previewing this area and I drove through Hampstead, I'd go right on. I mean, it's that bad.
Yeah.
So I don't see how it can't help. We got to get some cars off of 17 and on something else through that area. Now, would I rather it had went to the BP in Surf City? Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. And I feel like at some point that it will connect there.
Do you know why they changed that?
I don't. Now, I have, interesting thing though, is I have heard that the long range plans, and these are just, analysts' opinion of where things are going to go, but they say eventually at the Lowe's in the BP station that there'll be an overpass there that will go over 17. It'll come off of the bypass when it's extended there, and you'll have an overpass dropping you off on 210. I mean, we're talking 50, 60-year long-range plan. I mean, God, the high-rise bridge in Surf City was on a long-range plan for 30 years. I mean, we would. I mean, I remember in the 90s, they'd say, yep, we're getting a high-rise bridge, and we'd be on the list, and then, legislature would go through the budgeting process, and it would drop off the DOT master plan, and they would move it somewhere else. So when we finally said that we were getting a bridge, I didn't believe it till I saw the first pylon going in. I'm like, yeah, whatever, sure we are, but it's there.
Yeah, so we moved here. I think the bridge was already being built, if not close to completion, in 2015. Does that seem right?
15, 16, something like that, yeah.
So, I mean, the swing bridge was still in place, and we were here for the removal of that, but did that, I wasn't going over to the island a lot at that stage. Yeah. So did that make a big difference in the traffic going to and from the island? Because I still feel like it's a bottleneck.
It's always going to be a bottleneck. When no matter what you do, when you get to the island, there's only so many places you can go. It's one of two ways.
Yeah.
So you're always going to have a bottleneck there. And we have to face it, unless we build a freeway coming into the island, you're going to have a bottleneck on the mainland side. And if you go to any beach town on the eastern seaboard of the U.S. on Fridays and Saturdays, it is traffic.
Yeah.
And that's just life in a beach town.
Right.
You know?
Do you feel like the roundabouts have helped out?
Yeah, I think so. I think it helps to keep traffic flowing.
I do too.
You know, if people use it right. Now, a lot of people get nervous and they do a complete stop and all that. And you're like, oh, come on, let's go. But,
well, honestly, it took me a minute to realize, like, Krista, why are you stopping? Like, it was just kind of habit. Yeah. But now that I've gotten used to it, I was probably one of those you were behind. You're like, what is she doing?
Yeah. I remember I had a Jeep Wrangler when I left for college. I went to NC State, and I piled all my stuff in the Jeep, and I drove up Highway 50 all the way to Raleigh. I didn't take 40 because the Jeep was slow. And in Kenansville, there's a roundabout. I believe it's Kenansville. And when I got there, I had never seen a roundabout, and I didn't know what to do. I was just like, what? So I understand, but I know now what to do.
There's some down in Wilmington that got me used to it before that one was actually installed. So I kind of got the feel for it. So let's talk about what drew you into becoming a real estate agent. I know your aunt played a big part in your life. So can you tell me a little bit about her? Yeah,
my great aunt Elizabeth, but she's known as Peggy. That was her nickname, Lewis. And people say, when did you start real estate? And I say, when I was 8 years old. And
yeah, I remember you saying that's crazy.
Yeah, on Saturdays, Aunt Peggy would take me over to the office, and she would pay me probably $5 on a Saturday to wash real estate signs or clean the office and things like that. So I was in the environment from a very young age. Moving up into the teenage years, I got to the point where I'd answer the phone, and she had a small rental department, and I'd take reservations. And this was so long ago, we were still doing it by hand on paper. There was no computers. This was early 90s. And as things progressed and I got older, I'd work a little bit more. And then I left for college, and honestly, I never thought I'd come back. I had big dreams of I was going to be
real estate. Yeah, what did you go to college for?
I went to college for communications and a minor in computer science. And what I wanted to get into was advertising copywriting. Mm-hmm. I wanted to write advertisements. Okay. Like commercials and things. But
wait. Where'd you go to school?
North Carolina State.
Go Pack.
But I kept in touch with Aunt Peggy, and she would discuss business with me and things that was going on. And she made the comment to me, it was around 2000, late 99, 2000, that she thought she'd sell the business. She was getting up in years, and she was ready to retire. And she made the comment, she said, you worked in the office and stuff, but you never showed any interest in taking it over. And I thought to myself, I was like, wait, what? And she was like, you never showed any interest in taking it over. If you had I'd have turned it over to you. And I was like, that was a possibility.
You didn't even know.
I didn't even think that way at that age. So I said, wait, let me think a little bit before you do anything. So I came home, and it was a trial run just to see if I liked it. And it was a very small operation. It was my aunt and one other lady. We were on the causeway where the marina is now, the little white building, 421 Rowan Avenue across from East Coast Sports. That's where the office was. I think we had 8 vacation rentals. And so I cut my teeth with that, and I got my real estate license. And back then it was a salesperson's license first. And then about a month later, I got my broker's license. And then my aunt went to Turkey for 2 weeks and just left me in charge.
And said, go for it. Just jump right in.
Yeah, just go for
swim.
it. Yeah.
How did that go for you?
It went better than expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had some tough decisions, which I won't go into now, that I had to make, but I kept the business going those 2 weeks, which was an eternity back then for somebody 20, 21. Then one thing from another, gradually she started teaching me, and next thing you know, I was the one making the decisions and running, and she was coming in the office less and less and less. And, fast forward to today, it's a much different company, and we were managing 170 some vacation rentals. And
wait, what?
Yeah.
170?
Yeah. We're one of the larger vacation rental companies now. We're turning real estate in the brokerage side, with some of the big boys. So it's a whole different operation.
Wow.
Yeah, been very fortunate.
I really had no idea it was that many.
Yeah. So that's why I got a couple gray hairs.
So very few. You're doing fine. Okay. I'm assuming that all the people that have been relocating here, and it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That would obviously be wonderful for your business.
I mean, it's just mind-boggling growth, and we're seeing it in different demographics. We're seeing it in retirees. that are moving here, probably because of some of the good medical facilities we have in Wilmington, and what a better place to live at than the beach. But we're also seeing the young professional move here in the 20s and the 30s. And that was something that was never here. Like if you were in your 20s and you were single at Surf City, you had to go to Wilmington or somewhere else to meet people. So now it's a huge change having that demographic here and young families. And then, of course, we've got the military.
Right, yeah.
You know, and so the area is just – it's just fascinating how it's grown.
You probably had a lot of military from the get-go.
Yeah,
right?
we always did from the get-go. The weird thing was in the 90s, it was like you went over to Sneads Ferry, and now Sneads Ferry predominantly military. And, you know, even Holly Ridge is. But there was really no military presence there. There was no military personnel there in the 90s. It didn't seem one or two here or there. It was like they didn't even know we existed, and yet we were the back gate of Camp Lejeune.
Yeah.
And then I think the change really started happening in 2003 when George Bush, he did they called it BRAC. It was Base Realignment and Something Act. And it was when they closed down some bases and consolidated with other bases. So some bases left and some grew. Well, Camp Lejeune, being the largest amphibious marine base in the world, was not going to be shut down. It grew. Yeah. And they've moved people from the West Coast operations over to Camp Lejeune. They moved from other marine bases.
They still are.
Still are, yeah. And that was when we saw like the Sneads Ferry area just explode with growth. You know what I mean? We've got MARSOC, got Special Forces. Right. They're here.
They just relocated from California.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. So that really spurred the military growth was in 2003. And from there on, I mean, it's just exponential. And the amazing thing is many of them stay. You know, they love the area as much as we do. And then when they retire, they end up staying here. So
in 2008, there was the Great Recession. It was a housing crash. How did that affect you?
Yep. Well, you know, like in 2004, 2005, the real estate market was, it was like on steroids. I mean, prices were jumping like crazy for extent. I had helped a lady buy a condo. A year later, she calls and says, put it on the market, and we put it on for $100,000 more, and it sells.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, it was just wild.
Yeah.
You know, and then we got to 2007, 2008, and the crash started, and that lasted from 2008 to 2010. And at that time, you know, I'd only been in real estate with a license about 7, 8 years. And so, I mean, I had a great career for an early 20-something, but the banks had loosened up lending requirements, and they were, you know, we used to joke that you could be in prison and get a loan. I mean, it was like we never heard denied. It was always approved. And they would do adjustable rate mortgages, which means that the interest rate might be 3% right now, and the payment might be $800, and everything's great. And then you get a notice in the mail, your interest rate's 4, 5, 6, 7. And the payment goes up. Yeah. And now
you can no longer afford
that.
Now
you can no longer afford it. So they foreclose, and then the bank sells for pennies on the dollar because banks have insurance that gets money back, so they can afford to sell for pennies on the dollar. Yeah. So then you start having the market value drop, and then you got people that are over leveraged. I mean, it was just a chain reaction. Yeah. You know, so by the time 2008 came around, you know, we were going home, and I'd turn on the news, and it was another bank had collapsed. So basically, my industry was at the center of the problem. And we had people that were desperately needing to sell property, and we'd list it, and we'd do everything we could do, and it just nobody cared. Nobody wanted to buy. Nobody could get a loan. I would tell clients, look, I can go outside and stand on my head in the front yard, and they will not take a second look. I mean, I had doctors that I represented that had 13, 14 properties that couldn't even get a loan. And they were well-funded. I mean, it was just like the whole system had halted. So here I was. The rental department hadn't been built up to any degree. I think I had like 30 properties in, which was bigger than when I started, but it just hadn't got traction yet. And we were still a small company. And I worked for 2 years with absolutely no paycheck.
For 2 years?
2 years. I went through every bit of savings. I was fortunate enough that I had a good early start in my career. But, I mean, it ended up in a financial disaster for me. But there was an adage that I always kept saying in my head was that you never know how close to success you are if you quit. And that kept me through those 2 years till things started picking back up and we could put the pieces back together and move on. And I mean, I'm so thankful for that. My wife, we were newly married, and then the crisis happened, and She made money. She does hair. She was still making some money. I wasn't making anything. She's like, why don't you go get a job? And I'm like, I can't get a job. She's like, why? And I was like, because I was like, I've got an opportunity here, and I know what I can build if the economy straightens out. If I go get a job, I'm just going to help somebody else build it, and I'm not going to get the reward. So I'm stubborn as a mule, and I told her, I said, look, I'm going to stay there till they drag me out.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving. Yeah. And thank God I was right. It was a big chance. Thank God.
So it took about 2 years for it to turn around.
Yeah. 2 years we started seeing, change. It wasn't a good market. It wasn't, you weren't getting rich. You were just barely getting by. But about 2 years it started, the government pumped a bunch of money in the economy. They did a bunch of aid. They did a bunch of legislation to get things going. I mean,
that's right. I forgot about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because we really, we were basically at the Great Depression in a sense. You'd hear your grandparents talk about that, and it was getting to that point. I mean, there was on TV, there was tent cities. People living in tents because the bank had took their house because they couldn't pay for it. So
so people were in these loans that they could no longer afford to pay because of the adjustable rate.
Yep.
If they can't pay the loan and they can't sell the house, then it forecloses. And then the bank. So everyone lost.
Everybody lost. And we had to learn a whole new way to do real estate sales. We were doing what they call short sales. Yeah. And that was where we would be selling for less than what was owed, and the bank had to approve it. And it was kind of like a bailout for the bank in a sense, that we'll get this much instead of nothing. We were doing a lot. We were representing actually Bank of America. Ed in my office had over 100 listings with Bank of America that were foreclosed properties.
So you were essentially, if you were selling for the bank, that's...
Yep. The whole industry changed. And banks were corporate America, and they had certain requirements and certain forms and certain procedures. And, it was like learning real estate all over again, really, but thank God that ended. Yeah.
Yeah. What about COVID? How did COVID affect your business?
And I don't know how I knew this, but when there was an ABC News special 2020, and they were talking, I had heard the word COVID and such, but they were showing the cities in China were just deserted. And it scared the what out of me. I'm like, my God, this might be a real thing. So I started thinking about, well, what are we going to do? And I was already kind of preparing my mind how we're going to handle vacation rentals if there was quarantines and all these things. So the first 3-4 months of it was gut-wrenching. We really had no guidance from the government on what to do with existing vacation rentals, and we have to answer to two different bosses. We have to answer to the vacationer and to the owner. Right. And it was just kind of winging it. And some of what we call the OTAs, like VRBOs and the Airbnbs, they were just willy-nilly canceling reservations and giving people their money back, which our owners were screaming at us. And so we were trying to take it case-by-case basis. And
so the travelers were not canceling?
No, the travelers wanted to come. I mean, they
wanted to get to the beach town.
Yeah, they still wanted to get to the beach town. And, but due to the quarantines in different states and different things, they may or may not could leave. They may or may not could come back. So it was just unbelievably chaotic.
So the first 2 or 3 months, you had just a ton of cancellations.
Just tons of cancellations. I mean, it was like I was signing checks for refunds nonstop.
Yeah, that would freak me out.
It was wild. But once, I think it was around in May or June, things started settled to the point was like, okay, we've given ourselves the quarantine break. Now for the ones that want to go out in the world and go. And if you want to stay home, stay home. Yeah. But then we saw it was just unbelievable.
Oh, really?
Growth. I mean, just like we couldn't find enough houses to rent. It was just, they were all being filled up, and that ran for 3 years solid, just unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, unbelievable. And then finally in 2024, we did see a slight tick down, and that was industry-wide on vacations. But my theory is that, social media is just that. It gives you a snippet of the social mood. And when I look at my social media feed last year, a lot of my friends were going on cruises. They were going to resorts. They were going overseas because they hadn't been able to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I feel like that was, talking to colleagues in other areas that were in vacation rental spaces, they saw the same thing. But it was like if you took COVID out and you said 2019 and then fast forward to 2024, 2024 was still a better year than 2019.
It was.
Yeah. So it was like the linear growth that would have happened without COVID has now started.
Yeah.
And COVID was an anomaly. And in 2025, our books are looking better than 2024.
Awesome.
So we're back on a linear track of growth, which is sustainable.
It's a dip, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
where it should be.
It's where it should be.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. COVID was
That's so interesting.
It was wild. But, COVID, in another sense, in the late 90s, I took some internet classes at State, and that was groundbreaking. Well, we were like revolutionary that we would get on a computer and dial up and take a college class.
Yeah.
But so we've known that we could work from home. We've known that we could go to school from home. We've known all this for 25 years, but yet nobody ever kicked us in the butt and made us do it. COVID did.
Yeah.
And then the light bulb went off and everybody's like, wow, I could live at the beach. I could live at the mountains. I could live here. I could live there and still work.
Yeah.
So here comes all your 30-something professionals. So it's been, in hindsight, COVID was a challenge, but there's always benefits. And I mean, I'm not a dinosaur yet. I'm 47, but I remember a time when there wasn't internet, when there wasn't computers. In your 30s now, there was never a time. It's just second nature to them, to work from home. That's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know that the retirees from up north, they come down here. I've heard it's because North Carolina is central. If you go any further than us, it's a little too hot and too many bugs and there's alligators. And we're sort of like, we're at the lowest point that they want to go outside of the north.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But the temperatures are so much milder here.
Yeah. Yeah, we're actually class subtropical climate, which, this past winter I'd argue that, but we're supposed to be subtropical.
We did. We had about 6 inches on the ground.
Yeah.
It was a good time. When we first moved here, we made the mistake of putting some palms in our yard.
Yeah.
And it snowed. I think 17 or 18, we got a snow and it sat on those palm trees and they were dead.
Oh, yeah.
And then if people move here and they want those palm trees in their yard. I'm like, y'all be careful.
Yeah. I've got some in our office parking lot. The girls at the office just were all over me to put palm trees out. And I'm like, no. And they kept on. I'm like, fine.
Well, good luck. That would be better luck than we did.
Yeah.
I think I'll stick with the magnolias.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So we have all these people moving here. Have you seen a slowdown at all?
No. Interest rates has been a big topic the last couple of years.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I've been in this 25 plus years active with a license, and I remember the time in the early 2000s when the interest rate dropped under 6%, and we clicked our heels together and said, my God, it's free to borrow money. 5.9%, it's free. And people bought houses and everybody was excited. So now when I hear somebody griping, oh my God, the interest rate is 6%, and I'm like, you just been spoiled.
Yeah, well, we had a 3% interest rate.
Yeah, and that was not normal. That was not, if you look at the history, that was totally an anomaly. And, 6% is notoriously a great rate.
Yeah.
So the people coming to this area, that's not a deterrent for them. Now, I certainly can argue that for a first-time home buyer, typically you're strapped and you're on a wing and a prayer, and a point in the interest rate will make a huge difference for them.
Yeah.
But here, it doesn't seem to make that big a difference.
And people can always refinance if they do go lower, right? And so you're not seeing a slowdown at all. I thought I was seeing houses sit on the market. Just here in my own neighborhood, they were sitting on the market a long time. By that, I mean 30 days, right? That's a long time. Because at one point, people were like, before you list your home, could you please let me know? So people were outbidding each other.
Oh, yeah. And there was a time that we'd put a house on the market and within 2 hours, we'd have multiple offers.
Easy.
Yeah, it was, it's fun, but it's pandemonium. But in a traditional market, you're looking 2 to 3 months for home sales. And that's good. Usually you're happy. Yeah. So when it takes 30, 60 days, I'm like, great.
No problem.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. We found a good solid buyer, and it's probably going to be a great transaction.
I saw the dip, but I swear I think it's picked back up again where they're going a lot faster again.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right. Well, I was kind of hoping it was slowing down a little bit. Just because our schools are overcrowded.
Oh, gosh, I know.
How old are your kids?
My oldest is 12. She's in middle school at Dixon Middle, and our youngest is 8, and she's at Coastal. And I mean, the middle school, Dixon Middle, is 2 stories. It looks like a movie high school to me, because in my graduating class in 95 at Dixon High was like 120 kids. They have in her class, there's like 500 or 600 kids just in the 6th grade class. And I'm like, there wasn't that many people in the school. It was just mind blowing. But, the school system, Onslow and Pender County's got many accolades with Topsail through the years. And, and Dixon has been good for my children. They've grown in leaps and bounds. And, there's a lot of kids, but they're keeping up with the growth.
Yeah. Yeah. They're doing their best.
Yeah,
I can tell you that. And we've got 2 new schools being built here. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people were up in arms because they weren't building a new high school. So we have 1 high school and multiple middle schools and multiple elementary schools. But what we didn't understand was that the plan was they're going to build the new middle school near South Topsail. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to take the middle school that is here by the high school and make that, I think, the 9th grade. So it's going to go back into being high school.
Yep.
Absolutely. It may not be substantial, but any little bit helps. So being a real true local here, I know you've got the advantage of the area better than the new people that are coming in here. But what else? What other advantage is there to being a real true local here and selling real estate? Yeah,
there's an old nickname called an old salt. Like an old sea captain on the coast. He's an old salt, and that's kind of how we are. We're old salts. We've been through the hurricanes. We've been through the economic recessions. We know the area. We know the property owners. We know the pitfalls with insurance and the taxes and the regulatory agencies with the state. And you can't do a real estate transaction without having service providers, home inspectors, surveyors, pest control, attorneys. We know all of them personally. We know the good ones. We know the not so good ones. If I was to come into this area without that knowledge, it would be super hard to give the level of service that we get.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it'd almost be like I've got blinders on. I don't know which way to go, and I'm learning as I'm helping my client. Yeah. And that's not what they hire us for. They hire us for the knowledge.
Let's talk about the different real estate services that you offer and who each one is for. So let's start with the vacation property management. This is for homeowners who trust your team to manage their property rental, whether they live locally or not. Are most of them local or not?
Most of them are not. We have a lot of clients from the Triangle and from Charlotte and Greensboro, Winston-Salem, but we have equally as many from Ohio and Pennsylvania and Jersey and New York. And we even have some that live on the West Coast of California that have homes out here. So, they're spread around. There's clients that we've had for, Lord, they even were back with my aunt that I've never met. But I know them just as good as I know anybody else because we've worked with them, so never laid eyes on them. So,
how about that?
Yes, it's wild. But yeah, we've got a full-service vacation rental department. I got a full-time property manager, full-time maintenance coordinators, full-time housekeeping director, reservationist, full-time accountant on board. And our goal is that we handle everything for the homeowner, maintenance, guest concerns, booking reservations, cleaning, everything. Our goal is that in the end, all the owner has to do is check their bank account for the direct deposit or go to the bank and cash a check. And that's all they have to do. We do everything else for them, collect accommodation tax, sales tax, all those reports, all those things. Yeah, so it's totally full service.
I would imagine that some of those owners, do they ever, this is also their vacation home, like do they say, okay, in these 2 weeks, I'll be there, don't book it out?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. There's some companies that will put a limit on that, and we never have. I've always said, look,
it's your house.
It's your house. If you want to block it out and you want to come or send your family, understand you're not going to make money, and understand if it's a peak season that you're taking a great opportunity to make money from us. And at the end of the year, if you're not happy, it's because you booked it too much.
Yeah, I get it now.
So, and I've never ever, because I can fire a client, just like they can fire me, we can fire them. Yeah. I've never, ever, ever had to fire a client because they used it too much.
Okay.
So I have no need to put that barrier there.
Have you ever had to have a talk?
Never have.
Really?
No. Because they got expense just like us, and they're successful people, and they understand how money works, and they're like, "Yeah, you can come down. You can come down in the fall. when it's not going to
Yeah.
be booked.
Yeah.
And we're totally fine with that.
It's honestly the best time to come anyway.
I love the fall.
Yeah.
Love it here. Yeah.
It's locals high season.
It's right. It's almost like, like we don't go out to eat as much during the summer and
No,
like
because you can't get in
you
anywhere.
can't get in. And then October, you go out to eat and you see all the locals and we all joke it's like we're like a bunch of roaches crawling out from underneath things.
Is it safe to come out?
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so tell me what you do then for the renters.
For the renters is give them a great guest experience. When they call in to book the reservation, of course, our reservationists help them find a home that will fit their needs.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got like 50 pictures and 3D walkthroughs online. Floor
On your
plans.
website? Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, they're seeing the house before they ever get there. So we help them select it. And then we make everything as easy for them as possible, just like we do to owners. The linens are delivered. Beach toys and beach chairs, those are delivered and ready for them. They can
You
schedule,
work with local companies that
local
deliver
companies,
that stuff?
yep, and they can do it all through us. So it's just one invoice for their vacation.
That's great.
And then we coordinate all the others. And of course, we've got a 24-hour emergency line because an air conditioner is going to break in the summer.
Right.
It's just it's too hot for them.
Plumbing issues, like whatever can happen.
Yeah. So it's not out the ordinary that at 2:00 in the morning we've got our staff handling a problem. And the beautiful thing is that we do so much volume with local vendors that I can actually get an air conditioner guy out there at 2 a.m. Because
you've developed those relationships.
We've got those
so well.
relationships. Yeah. Because we're local.
Yeah.
Yep. So
what about the linens? Y'all provide the linens or people bring their own?
Here about 2 years ago, we made the change where we include the linens.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it could be that they could bring their own linens or they could rent their linens.
Okay.
Yeah, but
they would rent them through you or through a service.
Us.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they'd be delivered. But we made the change to include linens now on everything. Just industries change and demands from your consumer changes, and that was one of the things is they didn't want to. They want it all inclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're already overpacking anyway. The last thing I want to do is now have to bring in my sheet sets, and comforter covers, and all that stuff. Did you say you have laundering facilities at your management company?
We actually have a room designated to laundering because we'll switch out comforters from week to week, and you got to have them laundered while you're using the other one, and sometimes there's they get soiled and they need to be cleaned. So rather than run to the mainland to the laundromat and do this, do that, we just have it there.
That's great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about your vacation property management that I haven't covered?
Well, we're award-winning in vacation rental management. Of course, we got the Topsail Top Choice Award, and here's an award I haven't announced to anybody, so this is breaking news.
All right.
Yeah, there's a website called Comparent.com, and what Comparent is it compares vacation rental property management companies for a property owner that's seeking management. And we recently got awarded for the market leader in Topsail.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and
congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. And it's based on actual data. Comparent meshes in with our vacation rental system, so they're looking at all our finances and all our bookings and our ADRs and all these things, and that's how they pick that you're a market leader, and we got that award.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Tell me also, I'm looking at your website here, the VRMA
VRMA accreditation. We are the first, and to my knowledge, still the only company in Topsail that has that accreditation. And what VRMA is a Vacation Rental Management Association. It's a trade organization, and they provide training and knowledge and different things for vacation rental managers. And they have an accreditation. It took me probably 3 or 4 months and about a 2 or 3 inch stack of paper that I had to produce of how we did things, the results, our procedures, our policies, our finances.
Yeah.
And then after they review it, then if you're in compliance with how they think things should be done, they accredit you.
Nice.
And so we're the only accredited company in the area.
That's incredible. Yep. Very good.
Yes, ma'am.
And then what is this, the proud member of the 100 Collection?
Yeah, the 100 Collection is a group that goes out and curates vacation rentals, and they have certain guidelines. It's got to be this way, that way. It's got to be this quality or that quality. And the 100 Collection contacted us and wanted to select some of our vacation rentals to market in their collection to their guests. And their guests expect quality and service because it's part of the 100 Collection. And it provides a mechanism. I mean, really any property could be part of the 100 Collection. You might have to do some things, but you can always bring the quality up So it provides a mechanism that if an owner wants some more attention, we have these things that we could do to get you accepted by the 100 collection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Out of your 170.
Yeah, right now, I mean, they gave me a gamut of properties that we could have advertised with them, but of course, there's always a fee. So we didn't advertise them all because some of them didn't need it. Some of them are already booked for the summer.
Right.
But I think it's probably around 20 right now, which seems to be kind of the norm with other companies in the 100 collections, around 20 or so. But so far, it's given us some good results. We've been happy with it.
And before we move on, we have all different people from all walks of life coming here with all different budgets. So do you have properties that fit all the different budgets?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, from the small 1-bedroom condos at the north end to the 10-bedroom houses, it doesn't matter what you're looking for. We've got it.
You have long-term rentals too, and you mentioned seasonal rentals. So tell me about those.
Yeah, so long-term rentals, if you're living in the area and you want to sign a year lease, you actually live in the property. Typically on the island, it's hard to find a year lease because most of the time either the owners are using it or it's a vacation rental.
Right, yeah.
We do have a handful on the island that are long-term, but not as much as we do on the mainland.
Yeah.
What we do different in that is it seems that some companies would put a person in the house and then they don't go back in the house again for another year. Well, my God, what could happen in a year? The dog could have tore the carpet up. Holes in the wall.
Yeah.
It could be filthy. So we do quarterly checks on our long-term rentals.
Okay.
And that gives us the opportunity, one, to know the tenant better and to work with the tenant if there is a deficiency, whether caused by the tenant or whether just maintenance in the house.
Yeah.
Because sometimes maintenance goes to the wayside. Some tenants don't want to bother you. They're like, oh, the sink's leaking. I don't want to bother them.
In the meantime, it's costing more money.
Now the cabinet's rotted.
Creating more damage, yeah.
So we need to know. So that's one unique difference that I see is that we actually go look at the house.
And you let the renters know up ahead of time, like this is what we're going to be doing.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
You don't get any pushback.
You always get pushback with human beings.
I don't even know why I asked.
Houses are easy. People are hard.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, we do everything we can do to make it convenient for them, but it's part of our job is to go make sure the house is being taken care of.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. And what about the seasonal rentals?
What a seasonal rental is let's say we've got a vacation rental and it rents like dynamite from May to October. And then we have crickets chirping from November to May.
Yeah.
And the owner may not want to come down or may just want to turn some more money. So we have a list. We call it seasonals, and it's basically kind of like snowbirds, or even we've had military programs at Camp Lejeune, and they would bring in Marines and soldiers that would be staying in the area, and they'd have a government budget for housing, and they may be here for 3-4 months, and they would stay in them. So it's what it is a stay longer than 90 days, because if it's 90 days or less, it's still considered vacation rental, and that's codified with state legislature.
Okay.
So it's got to be more than 90 days. There's no accommodations tax. It's really akin to a year lease, but it's just shorter. And a lot of times you'll see things like, utilities will be included because, I mean, why take the utilities out of the owner's name for 4 months? So we'll put a cap on electricity. Hey, if your first 200 is on us, after 200, you got to pay the difference, things like that. But what it does, I mean, our owners love it, because, of course, it turns money. There's no reason and rhyme to it. I can't ever predict how many people's coming, why, when, where.
Yeah.
It's just, here's the list. They call, and we try to find them housing.
If you have a list of 30 houses that you do this with, what's the percentage that you typically?
Probably around 60.
Oh, that's not bad.
It's not bad. No, I mean, and there's been years like with the Ospreys, the real funny looking planes that the military have.
Yeah.
They do vertical takeoff and horizontal flight. The Marines, that's a Marine plane, and the Air Force were training on it. So this was back mid 2010s, in that range. Every year there would be like 20 Air Force pilots that were coming from somewhere out west, and they'd be aboard Camp Lejeune for that training program on the Ospreys, and they would stay with us. Now, we had actually made the list of being recommended to these pilots.
I was going to ask you if the base was the one that was setting up that contract with y'all. Like, we've got 20 people coming in. We'd like to use your facilities. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of people who moved here did want to rent first, whether it's waiting for your home to get completed, or to really get to know the area and figure out like which neighborhood do I want to build in. And that I think something like that would be really perfect for them. The only problem is if you haven't figured that out by a certain date, you still have to get out because you need it ready for
typically we're moving seasonals out around May.
Is that when that happens? May? I thought it would happen a little sooner than that, actually.
I mean, at the latest May. It depends on the house and the volume of the house, you know, how many vacations it's going to turn that year. But no later than May. Sometimes we're moving them out in March and April if we've got things to do in the house to get ready for vacation rental.
Okay. You've got 2 websites. So let's give the website address for the vacation.
Vacationsontopsail.com.
Vacationsontopsail.com.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So home sales and buying, we're talking about your traditional real estate now. So I have a question for you, and I feel like it's a dumb question, but I feel like there are other people out there like me who don't know the difference. I'll tell you, I had someone reach out to me who's going to be relocating here from New York, and he asked where the brokerages were. And I'm like, let me get back to you. So I need to know the difference between just a real estate agent and a real estate broker.
Yeah. In this state, there are no agents anymore. They're all brokers. When you go to real estate school and you pass the class and the state exam, you get what we call a PB license. It's a provisional broker's license. And what that means is that, one, you've done the minimal requirement to have a real estate license, and that 2, you've got to take 90 more hours of education to upgrade your license.
90.
90 more hours. And then the third thing is that you can't work unless you're associated with a broker that's broker in charge eligible, or a company who has a broker that's broker in charge eligible.
Oh.
And so let's say I'm a PB and I've got to hang my license is the term they use, and it comes from that you have to hang it on the wall in a brokerage house.
That is exactly the term that he used. I had no idea.
Yeah, it comes from the old days when you hung your license at the brokerage house.
Okay.
So you've got to hang your license, and then I've got to do my 90 days, and then I'm a broker. I still can't be a broker in charge because I've got to take and produce experience, and I think it's 2 or 3 years experience in this class and that class to be broker in charge eligible. And so then if I further my education and I get that experience and I'm broker in charge eligible, I can go to work for a company and be their broker in charge and run their sales department, or I can open my own company
Can there be multiple brokers in charge?
There can be multiple broker in charge eligible people in the office, but there can only be one broker in charge that is in charge.
Gotcha.
Yep. And, namely, the whole sales operation is under that person. They're responsible for what these other agents are doing.
Is that you?
No, thank God. It used to be.
Who is the poor soul?
Yeah, Ed McKenna, my vice president, he runs my sales department, our sales department, and he's the broker in charge for sales. Now, I am the broker in charge on the vacation rental side. Okay. And it's very similar. I'm responsible for everything my people do, and I've got to provide them guidance, and I got to know what they're doing and whatnot.
Okay. Yep. How many agents do you have working for you?
We've got 5 agents right now. We're still actively hiring. I've had as many as 10, but some have retired and some have gotten out of the business. There's companies that I call them a clearinghouse for agents. They just love to hire agents, and they may have 200 agents. And the truth of the matter is that these agents are paying a fee to be associated with that company, and the agents, in my mind, have become an invoice. And how is one broker in charge going to manage 200 agents or not? Yeah. The agents don't get the guidance they need. They're just out there. And that's not our philosophy. I'd rather have a smaller team that is skilled, close-knit, and manageable is how we've always done.
Just going back to that you were born and raised here and you're local, do you choose agents to come and work for you that are also local, or they kind of run the gamut?
Yeah, no, they're local.
They're all local.
Yeah, all our agents actually live here. They've lived here for some time. They may not be as local as I am because I'm as local as you can get, but they are local. That's key. That's key for us. I mean, our slogan's simply local, simply better.
Simply local, simply better. Yep. Okay. I want to ask another question that might be dumb, but I'm learning today. Do some agents only represent buyers and then some only represent sellers, or does everyone kind of do both?
In our office, we do both. It depends on the client's needs. Now, there are companies that are buyer agent only companies, and there are companies that are seller agent only companies, but we do both. We've taken classes to represent a seller, and on the other side, we've taken classes to represent a buyer.
Okay.
When it's called agency, when we sign an agency agreement with you, that means that it's our fiduciary responsibility to look out for your best interest and always try to get you the best possible price, terms, and conditions, disclose material facts, basically take care of you. And, we do that for sellers or buyers, depending on the situation.
What kind of buyers do you tend to see the most? Families, retirees, military, or those young, single 30-somethings?
On the island, usually investor / family that's investing is typically what you see on the island. Now, you don't see as many military on the island unless they're higher up the chain, because the price has gotten so crazy that, it's just not feasible. But on the mainland, it's a very good mix of, your 30-something, early 40-something professional, maybe 20-somethings, and, military.
Okay. And talking about the real estate investors, what kind of opportunities are there in the area right now if people are looking?
Yeah, here's something that's, we think, I see a house for 1.3, 1.4 million, and I'm like, my God, that's a lot of money. Because I remember when that same house would have sold for $100,000 25 years ago.
Yeah.
But when you go out away from here and you go to other areas like up north or down south in Florida, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 is a bargain. So we have people that will sell property in New York, and it would be a modest property.
Yeah.
But they've got $2 million. Their buying power is so strong.
Very modest house for $1 million, just $1 million.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that worries me.
A fixer-upper.
Yeah, fixer. Yeah. And that worries me about this area, because I remember when starter homes were $150,000, $175,000. Now the bottom of our market on the mainland's $350,000, $375,000.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, how do people get started with that? That's
I think
difficult.
That's the big complaint right now.
Yeah,
is the first-time buyers. How do you get started?
It is super difficult. And then another worry that I have with the price appreciation is that you've got people that's been here and they're of modest income, modest living, and they've been here, much like I have, for generations upon generations, and the property value is increasing and the taxes are increasing. And you've seen this in other areas as it gets to a point where they can't afford to even pay the property tax.
Yeah.
So now they have to sell their home place because of the growth. And I'm like, that
makes me sad.
Yeah, it makes me sad too. And I'm like, which I'm not running for office, but if I was to run for office, that would be one of the things, is that the state legislature needs to have some kind of buy down on property tax in those situations.
Yeah.
Because it's happening all over the state. North Carolina's just, everywhere you go, it's growing.
That's really happening a whole lot.
Everywhere in North Carolina. So it's not just a Surf City, Topsail Island problem. It's a North Carolina problem.
Yeah. My parents live on the Intercoastal up in Havelock, and the house is paid off, but they're on a very fixed income. Yeah. And they do talk about those property taxes.
And the insurance.
And the insurance is ridiculous.
Yeah. If you're retired and living on a fixed income, you're just one invoice away from a disaster. I mean, growth is great for us, but it's not for a lot of people.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say, so their property value's gone up and now they can sell and they are rich. Like they bought it for $30,000 and now it's $300,000 and they're doing great.
And that's true, but I'm in touch with so many locals. They don't want to sell.
They don't want to move. That's where.
Yeah, it's where they raised their children and their mom or dad was born. Different stories, family stories, and that's the last thing they want to do is sell it and and where do they go? They go somewhere else that's expensive.
Yeah.
So So yeah, can they make a bunch of money? Yeah, and do some of them do it? Yeah, but there's a lot of them that are like, I don't want to leave.
So the one last thing I want to say here is that website address is different now for your traditional real estate site. That is realestatetopsail.com.
Yeah, realestatetopsail.com, and that focuses just on buying and selling real estate. And it has every property that's listed in the North Carolina Regional MLS, no matter if it's listed with us or another company, because we can represent you.
Okay.
And the North Carolina Regional MLS has about 9,000 and some agents, and all their listings, it spans from as far north as like New Bern, Washington, all the way south and inland. Now, I won't say that we never sell outside our area, because if it's a coastal community, like we've sold in Oak Island, we've sold in Wrightsville, it's similar enough that we're comfortable. Our license says I can do brokerage activity anywhere in the state. But typically, being local, you focus on your local area, because that's where you know the area and you can give the great service.
Yeah.
And I represented myself on a mountain cabin that I bought, but that was for me. I wouldn't represent a buyer for a mountain cabin because
you just don't know the area.
I just don't know, as much about that as I do coastal property.
Yeah. So you may go outside of Greater Topsail, but you stay coastal in the areas that you know well.
Coastal in the area, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, because we get investors. I mean, most people love Topsail. It's just, I got to be at Topsail. But we do get investors like, I don't care where it is. I just want to be on the coast.
Yeah.
So we'll shop. We'll take them in Rye. We'll take them to Oak Island.
Okay, let's talk about your future plans. Where do you see Lewis Realty Associates in the next 3 to 5 years?
Next 3 to 5 years, continuing the growth curve. I'm not satisfied with the size of the company just yet, even though it's grown in leaps and bounds. I get bored easy, and growth keeps me from being bored. So continuing the growth curve, we do heavily marketing for vacation properties to manage and sales listings. So keeping that up, focusing on technology, because technology is where it's at. It's where it's always been. With the internet, we can reach out and touch people that are interested, instead of blindly advertising to people that have no interest whatsoever, and focus on the local area.
Are you hiring any new agents anytime soon?
Yeah, we always take them case by case, because we just won't take anyone. It's got to meet a certain criteria, but always. Before
we wrap things up, I like to leave the listeners with one last final thought. What would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, you see on TV and you see on social media that people say buy local, for Valentine's Day. And that's great. Absolutely. Buy from mom and pop, buy from the gift stores, everything. But that's even more important in real estate. And, it's deal with the local agents. You don't want to deal with a big box that they're all over the place. They don't know the area intimately. You want to find that agent that knows that area, lives in that area, has done business in that area. And that's where we come in, is because that's who we are. We know this area, and that's the value of us.
Before we go, what is your physical address?
Physical address is 320 North New River Drive in Surf City. We're right beside the famous Island Delights, little 1950s style hamburger and hot dog and ice cream restaurant. Yep, right beside them.
And you said you did some new work to this building recently?
Yeah, we had started, that building was built in 2003, the first part of it. And then a few years later, I bought the lot next door and made that a parking lot. And then just before Florence in 2019, we started with a addition, and it was for the sales department. And so we've added on the buildings around 6,000 square feet now.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's quite huge.
I'm going to have to stop by there and check it out.
Yeah. Big, nice conference rooms and many offices, and, really kind of a state-of-the-art facility from what it started as. When I started, our office was like maybe 600, 700 square feet. Very small. so it's quite different. People ask me that's known me for years. They'll say, you still in real estate? And I always say, yeah, the bank won't let me leave. And that's why.
That's funny. Okay, and just to repeat those website addresses again, one is realestatetopsail.com and the other is vacationsontopsail.com.
My phone number it's been the same phone number for 60-some years. It's 910-328-5211.
And what email address do you like to give out?
Yeah, you can do info@topsailarea.com.
Are you also on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, X, or LinkedIn, or any of the other ones?
Yeah, absolutely. I know our Facebook address by heart. It's the most coveted Facebook address out there. It's facebook.com/Topsail Island.
Oh my gosh, yes. You do not have that.
Yes,
that's
we have
awesome.
That. Yeah.
You grabbed it up.
Grabbed it up.
Oh, that's funny.
And the Instagram, the X and the LinkedIn, I can send you those. I don't know those by heart.
I'll find them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for coming in and and explaining all those things to me and telling me about your personal history as well, growing up here, and find it so fascinating to find someone who was born and raised here and just has those deep roots. I love it. So thank you. And thanks for telling me all about Lewis Realty Associates.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode of Topsail Insider, please show your support by clicking the follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast listening platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Please also go to topsailinsider.com and join our mailing list by clicking on the Make Me a Topsail Insider button. While you're there, you can click the Send Me a Voicemail button and let me know exactly what you're thinking. Your message just might be on an episode of Topsail Insider. You can email me at krista@topsailinsider.com or call or text me at 910-800-0111. Thank you for listening and supporting Topsail Insider and our local businesses and nonprofits. These are our neighbors and our friends, and together we build a mighty and a beautiful community I'm super proud to be a part of. I'll see you around Topsail.